Everyday superpower, where we talk relationships, game, human dynamics, everything in between. Today I'm coming with a very strong message, and it is what it is. You're not going to be able to convince them otherwise. You're not going to be able to change somebody's mind through the power of the word, okay? Debates never did anybody any good unless you were being recorded for it and it got put out there in the court of public opinion for them to make their mind up. If it's just you going back and forth with someone thinking, I'm right, you're wrong, no. Leave that to the general public who think that's a good idea. You should stop doing that because it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Stop doing it. If somebody doesn't ask for your opinion on something, don't go out of your way to try and sway their mind if they think otherwise. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. You can't prove somebody wrong. In the 48 Laws of Power, there's a story on a great sculptor. I don't know who it was. Due to the fact it was a great sculpture, I assume it was in the Renaissance, Italian period. But there's a story that somebody had commissioned a big sculpture to be made. And the person who commissioned it looks at the sculpture after it's been done, this great piece of art, and says, it's looking good, but I think... Now, I'm paraphrasing here, okay? It could be a different body part, it could be blah, 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 but the point remains the same. He looks at the sculpture and he says, the nose could be a bit smaller. You need to change the nose. And even though the artist who had created this sculpture knew everything was perfectly aligned and in great optimal proportion, he didn't disagree. He didn't argue back. What he did was he got on his ladder and he went up to the top of the sculpture and he collected within his hand some chippings that had been taken off of the sculpture during the art of creation. And he knocked his, whatever he would use, what would you use to create a sculpture? I don't know the term for it. But he knocked on the nose with his tools a couple of times. He didn't do anything. He didn't actually reduce the scale of the nose or change the shape of it. He just knocked on it a bit more. And as he did, he dropped the sand, the gravel, the chippings from the sculpture as he was knocking. He comes back down. He says, is that all right for you now? And the guy who had commissioned the sculpture says, yes, that's perfect. Even though nothing had changed on the sculpture. And the thing is, you'll get this in business. Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you blah, 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 blah. But I digress. The individual who commissioned the sculpture wanted to feel like they had some degree of power in the situation, and in doing so needed to make some comment. All right, it's like, the objection you might get from a woman by the end of the night, not out of let's say it's your first date, your second date or something, and you're ready to go to the bedroom and you get this random objection at the end, and it's not necessarily an objection in the sense that they don't want to go back with you. It's an objection in the sense that they just want you to prove what she already knows about you, yeah? And it's the same in the sales process. The fact that, you could be selling a house to someone and they want the house and they've aligned everything with you. It's been yes. And then at the end, they say, would you be able to do this and would you be able to do that? And they start pulling back and they start objecting. I don't know about this. I don't know about that. Because they're just wanting you to really settle their mind and just re-clarify and re-orchestrate and reconcentrate what they already know and what you've already told them. Right? It's a shit test per se. Like a woman will test you just to see where you stand, because that objection could create a normal man to feel insecure, to feel defensive, to lash out. Oh, what do you mean? We've come out for drinks and you're not going to have sex with me, blah, 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 blah. You're not going to come back. That's a red flag and she's going to be turned off by that. She's going to walk away. But the fact you have said, all right, yeah, that's no problem. You don't have to come back. Blah, 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 blah. You don't have to. It's fine. You don't have to take this house. That's completely fine. I do have other people who I'm going to be doing a viewing to just after here. They're waiting outside now. So that's completely fine. But are there any questions you want me covering just in regards to this objection? And then they will tell you, because they want the feeling of power and control over the situation, right? It's just a little friendly back and forth, just to recalibrate their senses on who you are as a person. Last moment situation. The sculptor had not done a thing to the statue, but he knew not to argue with the person and say it's fine and blah, 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 because the conscious mind does not want objection. You can't convince the conscious mind anything other, because then the ego is hurt. The conscious exists within the ego, and when you hear somebody talk about, oh, he's got his ego hurt, or he's egocentric and so forth, most people are egocentric because we walk around in our own conscious, speaking to ourselves and having our own, worldly views. And the moment you talk to someone about how they're wrong, you don't know how that's going to affect them. And they might agree with you on the frontal, but you've not really convinced them otherwise. And not only have you not convinced them otherwise, they may hold that against you and stop you from getting a promotion. They might have someone kick your door down. They might have blah, blah, blah. Have you hurt their ego? Come on. It doesn't work. You can't convince people otherwise. That's the reality of it. It has to be done indirectly. And such as the sculptor did, it has to be proven. Because then, when you see it with your own eyes, you can't lie to yourself and say, oh, no. You might try and rationalize it, but the truth is the truth and facts are facts. And if you witness it with your eyes, when you see it with your own eyes, when somebody else sees you seeing it with your own eyes, you're now going to look stupid for continuing on with the same understanding and beliefs. I seen a video recently. There's a person. I mean, he's suing people because of this, because his ego was hurt so much. There's a rapper or somebody who was in a prolific rap group back in the 80s, open-minded. What I would once consider as woke prior to it being rebranded as like a left-wing thing. Like, had an open mind, had his eyes open, spoke about black culture in a way which wasn't spoon-fed to you by the education system, the actual reality of such, and spoke about the Egyptians and blah, blah, blah. And he believed that the earth wasn't a globe. He believed in the flat earth theory, essentially. And he went on a podcast, and the person running the podcast invited on a scientist. And this scientist gets on, starts openly debating the guy, saying you're stupid and blah, 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 proves him wrong. Oh, I don't know the science, so whether he proved him wrong or not, but he made an embarrassment of this guy, basically, who believed in the flat earth theory. And the guy who believed in the flat earth didn't change his mind, or outwardly didn't change his mind. He might stop talking about it now because he's been embarrassed, but it created a divide between the two. Because by nature, politics is divisive, right? And a difference of opinion creates difference in people. So it was a clash. It was violent verbally. This man, who had prided himself on having this opinion and expressing this opinion, now has been embarrassed in front of people. He's not, after fighting back, going to change his mind and give that win to his opponent. He's just not going to do that. There's no point arguing with anyone on planet Earth unless, you're utilizing it in some sort of, emotionally leveraging way. Right? If you're that way inclined, if you're being a strategic mastermind and winding your partner up for the sake of her being, more engaged with you. But the thing is, if you sit there and argue with your wife, she's going to be turned off by you. Because there's no way you can just sit there and prove someone wrong when they have in a divisive manner, when they have a different opinion. There's no problem correcting people. And if they don't agree with it, you just say, okay, no problem. But to sit there and say, you're wrong, this is the way it is, and blah, 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 it's only going to create problems and turn somebody off. It's not attractive. It's repulsive. You're pushing them away. That's the way it is. In the workplace, are you going to get promoted because you think you're doing a good job by correcting your boss? No. Your boss wants to hold position and be the boss. The boss would rather have the company fail as long as they're behind the wheel of doing so than have the company succeed because you as a subordinate are telling them what to do. It's not going to work. You can't sit there and disagree with people and verbally debate people thinking it's a good thing to do. And just like these other people, you are in your ego as well. Your conscious thinking mind might not be as smart as you think it is yourself. Who are you to cast judgment on somebody else's perceived reality? It's your perception of reality versus their perception of reality. You exist in two different spaces. You can't tell them nothing because they have had their opinions and ideas forged through their own fire. Don't bother debating with no one unless, like I said, it's televised, unless you're in the court of public opinion where, if you actually get a good point across and actually prove something, the other people are going to take that back. You're not going to prove it to the person who you're there arguing with. They're going to shut down the moment you start expressing an opinion that is different to theirs and that they are wrong. They're going to think, fuck this, I'm not going to be disrespected like this. In changing opinions and changing and influencing different behaviors and so forth, you have to speak indirect, and that's why hypnotism is a thing. That's why embedded commands and so forth is a thing. Instead of telling somebody turn the television on, I'm not saying a woman who enjoys taking orders, let's say it's your friend and you say who's a male, happens to be a male, and you say turn the television off. It's a bit rude, isn't it? It's a bit bold, isn't it? The first thing they're going to think in their mind, they're going to be a little bit insulted by the idea you've been so bold. But if you were to say, oh, do you mind turning the television off? Is it a problem to turn the television off? I'm getting tired. Have you noticed that the message is still there, turn the television off, but it exists and it's been padded out and it's been concealed to a degree by this, verbal fluff, for lack of better terms. And that's how hypnotism works. That's how influencing and persuading people works in the realm where you don't have to be fully frontal and direct and forward. Yeah. I had it. I've been on a night out with someone who I didn't necessarily like too much anyway, and they've tested me as a man and said, "Move over there." So, move the stool over so somebody could squeeze in with the stool. And I've looked at him in return and I've said, I don't know what I've said, but I contested it because it was too bold and it was a direct command as opposed to being polite. And I took offense to it. So this is the way it works. Don't just tell people what's right and wrong. Don't just tell people. You have to do so in an illustrative, metaphoricalized, indirect way, generally speaking, for them to forge their own opinions and to garner the seed that's been planted to manifest an idea they perceive as their own, as opposed to, here's me just brainwashing you and implanting my opinion, which is right, because my ego and my perceived notion of reality must be right. It's egocentric, it's narcissistic. You don't do that. I'm signing out on that. That's game. Click like and subscribe. Peace.